there, everybody. Thank you for joining Coffee with Granny. I appreciate you coming. And you know, I forgot my coffee cup, so it's in there in the kitchen, getting cold. I've told you in my introduction that I wanted to tell you about things maybe you didn't know about. Since I've lived quite a long time of 80 years, I want to tell you about my young adult. I was a senior in high school, and I applied for a bus hostess for Continental Trailways. And that's what I bet you didn't know, that buses lines had hostesses. And I don't know, there must have been an ad somewhere in the paper. I don't know how in the world, but you had to go to Los Angeles to their headquarters. And a friend of mine, we just decided that's what we were going to do. And we left the morning after graduation. And as I think about it, I've thought about it all my life, and I thought, how did my mother and daddy let me do that? But they did, with their blessing. And it was a different time. There was not a fear of danger. We didn't have crime. Where I lived, we never had crime. So it was just out of sight, out of mind. I never was fearful, never. So we ride that bus out there if I remember right, I had about $30 in my pocket. That's all my mom and dad had to give me. And I think the stipulation was that if we got hired, see, we had put in our application and they told us to come out, but we weren't guaranteed a job. But I had an aunt that lived out there, and I think my mother and daddy thought, well, you know, if she doesn't get the job, she can stay with my aunt and then come back home. I think that's what they were thinking. So we ride that bus out there. It took us 2 days. You know, a bus, I don't know that you've ever ridden a bus, but a bus stops at every spot in the road. It either with cargo or you know, freight, or people getting on, and you stop at every single town. So it took us 2 days of really pushing it, and we got there at night. But I remember as we approached Los Angeles, I don't know if we were around not Bakersfield. Well, that San Bernardino, I think, is first. Anyway, I remember seeing on both sides of me, the perimeter all around me was just lights. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm stepping into a whole different world. And I was an innocent little high school kid. And I had never seen blacks with whites or any nationalities mixed. I had never seen that. I just was raw and green, and I just didn't know a lot of things. So anyway, I learned a lot of things while I was there, just watching. Oh, my stars, I saw everything under the sun. But we get there, and somehow, some way, we got a room, I think. And then we had our interview. I think it was like, we didn't wait. I think it was the very next day. And it was a top-notch company because they took care of us. They knew we were just kids. And we were very fortunate to be taken care of. And they came and got us. And we had our interview and we got the job. Both of us got the jobs. Well, as we were going back to our motel, we and the company did give us, I think, 2 weeks advance so we could get us an apartment. And there was just so many things. We didn't have a vehicle, so we didn't have to worry about that, but we needed a place to stay. So they gave us a paycheck right there on the spot. Well, they were taking us home. We're in downtown Los Angeles, stopped at a red light, and I was looking over this direction because there was a huge skyscraper. Well, there were huge buildings all around us, but over here was this bank. Oh, it was just a marble front, beautiful building. And I was looking over that way, and all of a sudden, here come a car head on and hit us. And the driver wasn't hurt. My friend in the back seat wasn't hurt. But because I wasn't looking and couldn't really kind of brace myself, I hit the windshield. And I didn't go all the way through it, thank heavens. And we didn't have seat belts back in those days. So I was fortunate that I just hit it and knocked a hole in it. But that's all I did. But I mean, the blood just goes gushing everywhere. And you know, when you have, I don't know if you've ever had a head injury, but it always looks worse than it really is because of the loss of blood. Well, they get me out of the car and take me over to that bank, big fancy bank, and laid me on the floor waiting for the ambulance. And here comes, I don't know if he was the president, I don't know who he was, but he was having a cow because I was bleeding all over his marble floor. And I remember that man, he was just irate. Well, here come the ambulance, and I guess they got it cleaned up. I didn't have to worry about that, but they take me to this emergency room place, and I had, I don't remember, 5 or 6, 7 stitches across here. And they told me I didn't have to come to work for a few days. And so it seems like I didn't go for 3 or 4 days. And then we got a place as close to the bus station as we could get. Now, I don't know if you ever noticed back when, but bus stations, and maybe they still are not in very good parts of town. That's just the way it is. And ours was no exception. But we got a room, an apartment as close as we could get because we had to walk. If you stop and think about all of the particulars of what we did, how the Lord's hand was on us, there's no other explanation. We were taken care of and watched over and unharmed. And I have 2 very scary things that happened to us out there, but I'm going to tell those later. But anyway, we get an apartment, and first day I go to work, they had told me, now you're going to walk by this park. And it was bushes and trees, and you really couldn't, and fenced in, and you couldn't see what was behind all that. But they told me at the bus station, do not go in there. You go around that park. Well, if I remember correctly, it was called Penn Square. And And I guess it was the homeless and the lowly of the lowliest and the worst of the worst were in there. So I took a wide path around it and walked, but I walked that every day for 4 months and never met any harm. By the time I would get to work, I was very thankful I was at work, that's for sure, because it was kind of scary. Well, our bus route, what hostesses did then was serve coffee, soft drinks, juices, sandwiches, and seems like there was some cheese and crackers. So we served lunch, and if we were on a route that was in the evenings, we served supper. It was part of the customer's ticket, and it came with it, and it was a nice service. And that Continental Trailways was top notch. It was full most of the times, and never less than 3/4. It was a real booming business back then. So my route went from Los Angeles we would go up to Bakersfield, Fresno, and then Modesto. And I'm sure we had a dozen little towns in between, but those were the main towns. Usually I went from like morning hours, and we would get to Modesto at 3 or 4, 5 o'clock. So that was my route. I didn't do that all the time. Sometimes I went to Needles, Arizona. And I didn't like that one quite as well because there was no real good place to eat in Needles, except at the motel, and they didn't really have much. And I didn't like the heat. But I loved going to Modesto. I really did. It was a beautiful motel. And, I'd call it a hotel. And it had the most fantastic restaurant. And I, all of my life, have suffered from asthma and allergies, and I was a sickly child, and I was sick. Well, I've been sick off and on all my life with asthma and allergies and 4 sinus surgeries. But I got out there to California, and I tell you, that fresh air, oh, I felt so good. I just felt better than I had in all my life. And I'd get to Modesto, and there was this restaurant that had a chicken salad that I've never seen anything like it since. It was creamy, and I ordered it every single time. And in the process, I gained 25 pounds in those 4 months that I was out there. But it was because I just felt so good. And just was, when you feel good and enjoying life, why, that tends to happen. We put on the weight. But anyway, as things go, we got homesick. We had wonderful jobs. We were having the time of our lives, but we were homesick. So we decided we would put in for a transfer to Albuquerque. And when we got to Albuquerque, we were so disappointed. Albuquerque went to Dalhart, and so that's where we were from. And we thought we'd have both worlds. We could still live in Albuquerque, but get to go home all the time, off and on. Well, the company was not run like it was in Los Angeles, and there was a lot of, shall we say, dilly-dallying around with the drivers and the bus hostesses, and it was almost a certain thing that you did that. And I I couldn't go along with that and didn't like that, and so eventually we quit and we went home. But it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. I wouldn't have traded the adventure for anything. And I'm so thankful the Lord's hand was upon me and He guided and protected me. And now you know that there were bus hostesses. Now this is back in 1963. And Continental Trailways. I'm sure they're not even in existence. I don't know anything about that, but you've learned something, I hope, today. I hope you've enjoyed my little story today. And I hope you're having a wonderful, blessed week. And next week we'll have something, we'll talk a little bit about loneliness during the holidays and what we can do. I'm not a psychologist and I don't pretend to be, but I do have some tips and things to tell you that might help you, okay? Alrighty, thank you for watching. God bless. Take care of yourself. Until we meet again. Bye.